I'm just going to put it on speaker mute. And if you ladies have questions, just try to keep yourself muted, and then I will set it up for questions whenever whenever the presentation is over. I think we're live, so good rising, everybody. I hope you are doing well on this Saturday morning. I'm Muffy Mendoza, the founder of Pittsburgh Brown Mamas, and we're going to be doing a quick, excuse me, I'm a little bit under the weather today, so please excuse me. But we're going to be doing a quick info session about the Brown Mama Monologues and what a monologue is and how to prepare for auditions if you're interested in auditioning for the show. So, first, I want to let you guys know some important dates. So, auditions are going to be happening on Saturday, October 30th, as well as on Saturday, November 6th. Location to be announced, but they will be in person. And the way we typically do auditions is that we ask everybody to fill out an online form if they're interested in auditioning for the show, and then we take the forms that you all filled out and we invite you to audition for the show. So on the form, you're going to be asked some questions like, what your your story is about, why you want to be a part of the Brown Mama Monologue showcase, and some other questions like that. So first thing is you should be prepared to fill out that form. Just when you come into the room, ladies, make sure you mute yourself. So first you should be prepared to fill out that form. Um, and then we'll reach out to you if we are interested in having you audition. And the reason why we're doing that is number one, because of COVID, we want to make sure there's not too many people in the room at one time if it's unnecessary. And then also, we do that so that we don't waste your time. Over the years, it's become easier to recognize people who are ready to take the stage versus people who aren't. And one of the things I always tell moms is if what you're talking about in your story you haven't had a full circle moment from, it's probably best you don't talk about it. And we'll go over the reasons why for that in a few minutes. So, just going over logistics first again. Um, a lot of people think with the monologues that we just put the women up on the stage and they just tell their story. That's not the way it works. So, what we typically do is we're working with moms for about between 4 and 6 months. No, so January, February, March, April. So it's 4 months. We're working with the moms for 4 months behind the scenes. So taking, they're doing rehearsals every month, and then they're also working with a writing and a speaking coach. Our writing coach is Tiffany Huff from the Scenes from a Single Mom Project and When She Thrives, and I'm your speaking coach. So we don't just throw moms up on the stage like, here's your story, now go read it. You go through rehearsals, um, you go through writing training, you go through speaking training. This year we're going to be trying to bring in an art therapist as well, to just help with the moms, because each rehearsal is really like a therapeutic session. And actually, Brandy is on here. So, Brandy, at the end, it would be cool if you could talk about that a little bit about your rehearsal experience. Um, so, Brandy has done the show before. Um, so, maybe she can give a little bird's eye view about that experience, because I'm sure it's different from my own experience. Even though I've done the show before too, but I'm always from a different perspective. Um, in the recent years, we have been able to now pay our speakers. So we are going to be paying our speakers this year. So you'll be paid for your time, even though you will still be considered a volunteer. So it's more like a stipend, because you are basically, your story is still your story. You can do whatever you want with it when you leave the Brown Mama Monologues, but we do own the rights to the story, the presentation, the day of the monologue showcase. So, what that basically means is the presentation that you give that night, we can do, whatever we're going to do with it, which is typically uploaded to YouTube. We might use it we may use it in later presentations of the show and marketing materials and whatnot. But your story is still yours, and we don't claim any rights to your story. We just claim rights to your presentation the night of the show. Um, a lot of people ask, can they tell a story about anything? And I always say, you can, but it needs to be from a black mothering perspective. So you don't have to write a story about, what your kids are doing every day at home. You can write a story about, a funny experience that you had with your kids and what it taught you about motherhood. You can write a story about an experience you had as a mother. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a story that is about motherhood as much as it has to be a black mom's perspective on this. So you want to bring in that perspective of what it meant to go through this experience as you were raising your kids and as you were navigating motherhood as a black woman. The number one thing you can do to learn, I'm going to go over this infographic that I created real quick that hopefully will help you guys to learn a little bit more about what a monologue is. But first, I just want to say that one of the best things you can do to learn more about this experience is to watch the past showcases. I'm sorry, my house is really loud, so if you hear them yelling in the background, that's why. Um, but that the one of the best things you can do is watch the old, not the old, but the storytellers from the years past, and that will give you a lot of perspective in terms of what we're looking for, and in terms of just understanding, um, you know, how that needs to. I'm trying to go into the comments. Um, how what your finished product ultimately is going to look like and feel like, and what it's like to be up there in front of the audience, because hopefully COVID willing, we're going to be able to do an in-person show next year. The show date is May 7th, 2021, and we don't announce the rehearsal dates until we pick all the speakers, because we want to make sure that the rehearsal dates work for everybody. But the show date is already set, and it's May 7th, 2021. So that is the day before Mother's Day. So I'm going to just go over this infographic that I created real quick. So to answer a few questions in terms of like, what is a monologue? So, for the purposes of the Brown Mama Monologues, a monologue is a presentation of a story about a happening, experience, or instance in your mothering journey, and it's typically 5 to 7 minutes in length. It has a beginning, middle, and an end, and it's composed of content that is easily seen by the mind's eye. So, some of the things you need to think about when you're writing your monologue and when you're considering auditioning for the show is that you need to be using vivid imagery and words. I always tell the speakers what's most important is that I can follow you from beginning to end with my mind's eye. A monologue is not a speech. A speech is telling something. A monologue is actually helping me to experience it with you. So that's one thing to remember. And your monologue has to have climax and relaxation. Um, the imagery that I always give the moms, the speakers, is to make sure that it is going like this. You want your story to have both a climax and then a downhill experience. And then a climax, it's almost like walking up a hill and then walking back down the hill and then walking up the hill and walking back down the hill. So we want you to tell us your story, but more importantly, we want to experience your story with you. Um, we want a walkthrough of your story. Let's see. Oh, one of the things that I always remind the moms is we're not here to tell other people's stories. So one of the things we're not ever going to do in this showcase is we're not going to let you get on stage and bash somebody. You can tell about your experience with someone from your perspective, but we're not going to let you get on stage and ruin somebody's reputation or tell things that you haven't discussed with them. All of the people in your story, you need to discuss with them that you're talking about them in your story. I always tell the story of my own story that I told on stage, and I thought that I'd talked to everybody that I needed to talk to, but I hadn't talked to my son about my story because I didn't really think that it would affect him, but it did. And so while everybody else was out, after the show, you know, talking to people and having a good time, I was backstage basically consoling my son who was crying his eyes out. And that was because I didn't talk to everybody I needed to talk to. So if you're thinking about writing a story about your experience with multiple people, you really, really, really need to consider all of the people that you're going to talk about, and you need to talk to them about what you're going to talk about. And if you don't yet have if the relationship has not come to a point where you can talk to that person, chances are you should not be talking about them on stage. It's that simple. I always tell the moms, if you haven't had a 360-degree experience with this story, then you shouldn't be telling it on stage. Why? Because you haven't healed from it and you haven't resolved it in your life. We're only telling stories that have been resolved, even if the resolve just means that you've resolved it within yourself. Um, that still means there should be an element of peace within there, and there should also be an element of mutual respect that you've experienced with the people who are in the story. And we've had people drop out of the show before because when it really came down to it, they weren't able to have those conversations, or maybe the person that they were talking about in the story could not fathom them getting on stage and telling that story from that perspective. And that's okay. Um, you can always come back and talk about your story later. That's one of the things to know, is that this show hopefully is going to be a life, it's going to be something that's happening in Pittsburgh for years and years and years to come. And so if you have a story to tell and you know that that story is just not ready yet, that's okay. We'll be here in 2022. You can come back and talk to us then. The stories are usually between 5 and 7 minutes, and we want you to keep it short and sweet. We're not giving you 12 minutes on stage to tell your diatribe of a story. We're going to make you shorten it. And that's a big part of this process, is working with the writing coach um, to basically perfect your story. So what you come in with, even if you think you're coming in with the perfect story, chances are it's not going to be the same by the time you leave. I think that's maybe only happened 1 or 2 times where there were no changes that needed to be made to the story. Some questions to ask yourself once you sit down to write is, does your story have characters? Does it have a plot? Does it have a setting? Can we see the setting? And does it have a beginning, middle, and end? If your story doesn't have a beginning, middle, and end, more than likely it's a speech. It's not a story. And we're telling stories. You'll probably hear us refer to the speakers as storytellers, because that's what we refer to them as. Because you really are telling a story. You're not giving a speech. You're not going to have PowerPoints. You're not going to have props. You're just going to have you on stage with the story. So if the audience cannot follow the story in their mind's eye, you're going to lose them and they're going to stop listening. But we'll tell you if your story is boring or if it's a speech. So I think that is the end of the presentation. So I'm just going to open it up for questions. Does anybody have any questions? And I'll also look on Facebook to see if there's questions in the comments. So if you're logging in from Facebook, um, you know, please post your questions in the comments and I will answer them. Go ahead, Callista.
So typically, how many people do you select um,
So
to
each show
actually
has.
be
Oh, go
in
ahead.
the
Go ahead. Oops, I'm sorry, sis. I'm trying to. Why is it not being quiet? Okay, go ahead, Calista. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just wondering, like, out of maybe, let's say you have 30 moms who submit, you know, how do you kind of, what's like your rubric in terms of like choosing how to narrow it down? And then how many people do you pick like for the final?
So we do 10 speakers. Um, I would say 8 to 10, because in recent years, I'm like, maybe we don't need 10. Maybe we could just have 8. But we won't pick any more than 10. And then we're typically, the things that we're, what's the word I'm looking for? What we're looking for is a compelling story that's out of the ordinary. So we really don't want not that we don't want, because we've had stories like that are stories that would show up on, the 7 o'clock news or the 6 o'clock news. We've had those stories and we appreciate those stories and we embrace those stories because they are also a part of the Black mothering experience. But we want to hear stuff that's different, because we know that there are some stereotypes out there about the way Black women mother their children. And so we're really looking, I mean, the purpose and mission of the Brown Mama Monologues is redefining the American motherhood narrative to be more inclusive of Black mothering stories and lived experiences. And so, through that redefinition, what we're really seeking out is to show the varied and vast ways that Black women mother their children. Um, So we're looking for a compelling story, a unique story. We're looking for how comfortable you feel giving your story. We're looking for that 360 experience. So are you taking us from beginning to end? Or are you taking us to the middle of your story that you haven't even finished yet? So we're looking for that. And then we're also just looking for some, logistic stuff. How long is your story? Could we cut it down? Or did you come in with a half an hour worth of story that there's no way we could cut that down and it seems very unresolved? Um, we're looking for how well written your story was. Are you a good writer or are you somebody we're going to have to work with? And let me just say, if you have a good story, but it's not written the most, but we can see that the bare bones of it is really good, we'll still pick you. Cause like I said, we know we're gonna work with you anyway. So that's not that big of a deal. So I mean, those are pretty much the things that we're looking for. We do have like a scorecard that we use, but we ain't going to give the whole scorecard away because we really want you to come authentically as yourself, and we really also want you to come not thinking about the scorecard, but really trying to express your new, unique perspective. Will we be able to use the video of our presentation in our own media? Yes, absolutely can. So it'll be uploaded to YouTube, and then it'll be, anybody you can use it. Somebody else can embed it on their website. I hope they don't, but once it's on YouTube, there's really nothing we can do about that. But yep. How can we watch previous presentations? They're all on YouTube. If you just go on YouTube, I'll put the link in the comments real quick. Yeah, last year's entire show is on YouTube, and all of the other ones have been thanks, Brian. So yep, they're all on YouTube. Any other questions? All right. If there's no other questions, that is it. Um, we'll be putting out the form this week for you guys to audition if you're interested. And yeah, we'll see you. Oh no, Brand. Yeah, we wanted to hear Brandy's perspective. Go ahead, Brand.
So good morning, everyone. I volunteered for the first monologue, was a speaker in the second monologue. So I was able to see a little bit of behind the scenes and share my own personal experience. And one of the things, Manny, sorry y'all, I'm a mother, for real. Don't scream at me, I told you I'm on this lap. So one of the things that I really appreciated about being a speaker was the sisterhood that came along with sharing a story that had wisdom and power to it with other women who also had similar stories of overcoming whatever it was that they overcome. So I have gotten close to 9 other women. And that was that was a very enriching part of this experience. And I really appreciated that. And it also strengthened me as a writer. I am a creative, I write all the time. So the training we got from Tiffany and Muffy was very helpful. I appreciated that. They did push me. So if you think those of you who are creatives were a little bit, we take our creativity personal, but they will push you. And that's good. That's a great experience, especially as a creative. It's hard to sometimes get that next level of inspiration and push. So that was very helpful. And also the day of, we don't generally speak of this way either, but come as your best self. I want you to come here, baby. Come here. Come here. Come on. Come on. Let's show the people how you feel. Oh my goodness.
Hey, Manny.
Yeah, he wants breakfast. He's like, you're on this lap and I'm hungry. But on the night of the show, you will be able to give a performance, get dressed in your best outfit and just go out there and show the world who you really are. And there's just something really powerful about that. There's not many instances where you can get up, get dressed, and really show up in your full power. And this opportunity allows you to do that. So have fun with it. I don't know if we're going to have a stylist, but we had a stylist previous years because that red dress, y'all, that was not my first choice. They had to push me to put that on. But the whole experience, it is an experience. It's not just a show. It is a complete experience that you will always take with you. And I actually watch my monologue at least once a month to remind myself that I'm still that person. So be encouraged. I'm ready to hear your stories because I'm sure I'll be a judge. So come with it.
I love that, brand. You never told me that, but that's really encouraging. Um, there were some questions in the comments I want to answer, and I do want to. One thing Brandy said was because she was very resistant. she was like, "It's my story. I'm not changing it," but we did work with her to. She didn't really have a lot of changes to make, as much as we just wanted to make sure that everybody could follow her story and make sure that she, like she said, she was showing up as her best self. And I think that's really important. And, since I'm typically working behind the scenes, I don't always realize how much of an experience it is, but we do hear that a lot from the women. Like, it is really an experience for them. We have women from each show that walked away with really good lifetime relationships. And I just want to answer the questions that were in the comments. Um, if you no longer reside in Pittsburgh, can you apply? Not for the Pittsburgh show. So the Pittsburgh show is unique in that it will always be our show that is here, that is for women from Pittsburgh. But one of the things that we are adding in 2022 is we're going to do one virtual show every year. And for the virtual show, we're going to allow moms from other cities to be a part of the virtual show. But for the Pittsburgh show, it is just for the women in Pittsburgh because we're doing it. It's more of an experience that's about the women, really, even more so than it's about the show. Um, you know, because we spend that amount of time with them and in the in-person rehearsals and whatnot. And with the virtual show, it's a little bit different because we're doing mostly everything virtually because it's not in Pittsburgh and I'm in Pittsburgh. You do not need to have your monologue memorized the day of the show. Um, you can read from your paper, you can read from your cell phone, but you will need to have it memorized the night of the show. There will be no cell phones, there will be no papers, no nothing. But when you come to when you come to auditions, you can definitely read from a paper or something. We don't expect you to have it memorized. Um, can you come with an outline? I would not do that because if you come with an outline, it's going to read like a presentation. And like I said, we're not doing presentations. Now, if you come with an outline and you're cool to read it as a story, that's up to you. We ain't checking for what's on your paper. We're listen. What you need to know is at auditions, we're going to be listening to your story and we're going to be choosing from what you present at your audition. So if you're reading an outline and it sounds like bullet points, chances are going to we're not going to call you back um, because it sounds like bullet points, and bullet points is not a story. All right. Let me just check the chat real quick to see if there's any questions. Nope. So if anybody has any more questions, you can post them in the comments. If not, I think we're good to go. All right, y'all. If you have questions later, what I would do is post them underneath this video, which I'm going to pin to the top of the Pittsburgh Brown Mamas group so that anybody wants to watch it later can watch it. And then, of course, me and the admins are always paying attention, so you guys can post your questions and we'll answer them. All right, thank you everybody for attending and listening, and I look forward to hearing your stories. Have a happy Saturday. Peace.
Thank you.
No problem.